face, which you get from it. I woke up, and all of a sudden, I thought I was having a heart attack. I was breaking out in sweats. I was shaking. I could hardly breathe. I put it this way. My wife actually even told me afterwards, I guess I was a butthole for like the last couple months, that nobody could stand being around me because, if somebody said the wrong word, I would tell them where they would go. I didn't matter if the guy was 30 years old and 6'4", and then a football player, I'd tell him where to go, and she said she was getting scared. And I went to the ER. They did what they could do. Then I go to my doctor, and he goes, well, we're going to wing you off this. And the first doctor goes, oh, we can wing you off at this in a week. And then the major doctor in the medical clinic, he also is the director of the emergency room at our local hospital. He goes, you can't wing him off on a week when he's been on it a year. It's going to take months to wing him off of it. And it was like if you were taking heroin, and that's how it affects you. It's it's the hardest thing in the world to come off of.
Oh, wow.
And, so anybody out there taking prednisone thinking you're going to develop muscles or it's going to help your ache and pains, you know what? It will help your pain a lot, but you're going to pay the price in the way you never want to pay it. Because
my deceased wife, everything you just said, she went through it, and I seen it, witnessed it, and lived through it. So yeah, it's true. It is true.
Hopefully, it didn't have anything to do with your breakup and your marriage.
It probably didn't help matters any. That's for sure.
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, that there was some. The drug, they changed your personality like over 12, because she had a pseudotumor cerebri, which is like a brain tumor, and what it does, it blocks the spinal fluid from leaking properly, and you get bad migraines, and it's terrible. So, you got medications for that, and then there was operations, they give her medications, and over prolonged use with the prednisone and the pain medications, they change a person's personality, and then you add in all the side effects and mix it all together, and it's just, it's disaster. It's disaster, So I know I can relate what you're talking to for sure.
Well, what I really hate too is, when you sit there and you finally get a doctor to open up, a lot of them won't open up and tell you. I mean, the doctor originally I was going to, before I switched doctors, would have sat there and said, hey, this medicine is going to cause this type of side effect. He never did that. I'd ask him, hey, is this going to cause any problem? No, that's not going to cause any problem. But baloney. And, at one point I was on 11 major different drugs every day.
Wow.
And, and when I found, in fact, one day, I'm very, and I'm only saying this to help people out there to watch out, with doctors and your medication. Yeah. One day I got up and I couldn't hold my bladder at all. I got out of bed and my bladder emptied. And I started really panicking because I felt I didn't have no feel of my bladder, And then I go into the doctor, and this doctor was a younger doctor. He wanted to, pulled up my chart on the internet, which they can do nowadays, started looking at all these drugs, and he goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I go, what? He goes, you can't take this and this and this together. It's lethal.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly. There's a lot of them. That's what I mean. Especially with the muscle relaxers and pain pills and even other pills. Some of them, they don't interact very well together at all. Some of them.
Oh yeah.
And I'm surprised your pharmacist didn't say something to you, because a lot of times pharmacists will interact and say, well, this and this doesn't go well over doctors, but yeah, that very much so.
Yeah, well, the pharmacist never once said anything. They just give you, when you pick up it's a national chain. You go in there, they give you a little printout, of the side effects. Never told me, never called me up or ever said, hey, all these drugs you're taking are not compatible. But you know what? Yeah. 3 days after I eliminated that drug, the doctor, said, don't take these 3 anymore. Everything went back to normal. And I'll tell you, it scared me, because he told me if I would have used it another day or two, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
You want to hear another scary fact? I know from life experiences, especially in the 90s and the early 2000s. I don't know how much about today, but because my deceased wife, she was on a lot of medication. But these medicine companies, pill companies, they will come in with their salesmen or whatever to doctors' offices, whatever, and they want to produce and promote their stuff. So they would give their doctors kickbacks or a percentage to write scripts for these medications. So now they've got an incentive to write a prescription where maybe they shouldn't with this medicine, but they did anyway because they're getting paid. You see how dangerous that is?
Well, yeah, I'm leery anytime you go into a doctor's office and he comes out with a handful of samples.
Exactly. That's where it starts, with the samples.
Yeah.
See, and a lot of people don't know this, but they would get a percentage or cutbacks or I don't know what the word is for it, but for writing their script for their medicine. And a lot of these medicines, they're new. They haven't been around a while, tested. We only know what they tell us anyway. And if they're out there to sell, maybe they just barely pass the sell, but there's no 10, 20 years of proof of what it does. And even if there is, they're not going to say, oh, yeah, you might drop over if you use this or this. And even if they did do it, people's going to ignore it because they're getting paid at the expense of patients.
Yeah, that's what's bad. And, and when you even get, I don't know how many people, but you get your prescription, right? You usually get a printout, right, of the side effects. But some of the side effects they put down, they're so small. And if you're an older person, unless you got a magnifying glass or reading glasses, you can't read what it says.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
Or go listen to one of the commercials on TV, right? They're talking about, hey, this medicine is going to help you for arthritis. But then at the very end of the commercial, it tells you, well, it could kill you. It could do this. It could do this and do this. Well, do you want to really try it to help your arthritis pain? Or it cause you to go blind? Who knows? I mean, you want to try it and find out?
I know. I know what you're talking about. I've seen some of them, and at the end, they list off about 25 things that could do, and it's like, oh my God! If even 2 of them things would happen, you have to go on a whole nother regimen of pills to take care of those.
Well, the last time I went to the doctor, I said, "What pills can you prescribe for my condition that will, basically cause me not to get an erection anymore?" And he goes, "Well, this right here will." I said, "Give me a whole bunch of them." That's a bad joke. You get it? Married.
Yeah. Yeah, I got just was it. Oh boy.
Yeah. What can I say?
That's funny. I'll tell you another horror story that's true that maybe people don't realize is organ donors. Now I know this because my deceased wife, again, she was an organ donor, and she would go to the emergency room a lot. I spent a lot of time. I probably spent more time in the hospital than a lot of doctors. So we're sitting in, and this one person come in, and this was back in probably right around 2000, maybe 1999. But and we're sitting there, and there was just a curtain, and this person had been hurt. Now this person had no insurance. Now they were borderline; they could help the person, but he had no insurance. Now he might make it be okay, but he might not. And I can hear the doctor saying, "Look, they got no insurance. He's an organ donor. Let's just go tell the family, look, he's not going to make it. He's an organ donor. He can save a lot of people."
Yeah.
So it's like they swayed the people not to help because he didn't have insurance, and it was like that's a scary thought.
Oh, it is.
If you really think about it, because here's another thing I learned: some of them organs, there's people making money off those organs.
Oh, yeah.
Hospitals and doctors and whatever. And that's big money. Unfortunately, some people are better off letting die. You make a lot more money off of you than them dying with no insurance and you getting nothing.
Well, that's one thing I have to admit. You know how China gets all the organ donors? Every time they go out, and that's why they also execute their prisoners by gunshot to the head, is they shoot them in the head for they could harvest their organs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was on the news a couple of years ago. I read that and I go, oh my God, that's probably why they put a lot of people in prison and execute them in China. For the wealthy people.
there's a lot of hidden agendas out there, Gary.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it's really funny, James. I have, in 40-some years riding a motorcycle, I've never crashed, no, nothing, never dropped a bike. Last September, I hurt myself. I dropped the bike with me and my wife on it. I go to the doctor, right? And he found out, well, yeah, he has motorcycle insurance. He's covered for, you know. This doctor, you know, as soon as he found out, because he asked me, well, who's your insurance company and all this? Normally, his receptionist or the lady up front would ask that. He was asking me this in the examining room. As soon as he found out I had insurance, and he wanted to know how much my limits were, because on motorcycle, it's not as much as if you drive a car and get hurt. You know, he figured out every which way he could to max it out.
Yeah. Now, what's that tell you? That wasn't his first rodeo there to do that, was it?
No, I figure every time, you know what, that's like every time somebody comes in there in a car accident, oh, hey, I can run this test, I can run this test, oh, look at all the money I make. I'm not saying all doctors are like that. So I know there's doctors that listen to my show, but there is some doctors out there that are like that.
Oh, my, you know what? I have seen and heard a bunch. Listen, I don't even know. I shouldn't even mention the hospital, but my wife, when she was alive.
Don't mention the hospital name. Don't mention the name.
No, I won't. You want me to?
No, I don't.
No, I wasn't going to anyway. But anyway, I was going to say, you trying to get me waxed? Anyway, it was in the 90s, and this one doctor, this was on the East Coast anyway. Now, he was having her come in once a week for a spinal tap. Now,
that's painful. Whoa.
Well, here's the thing. You're not supposed to have more than a few spinal taps in a year. She was getting it once a week because, here's the thing, he's getting $800 every time he gave her one. $800. Now, you're only supposed to have maybe a handful. I forget what it is. I don't know what it is now, but back then I think it was like maybe one a month or one every other month. She was getting one once a week. Well, I was just learning a lot of medicine, and even then I was like, that's not right. So I conferred with other doctors, like, oh my goodness, no. I mean, listen, every time they do that, you're very susceptible to meningitis, and if they do it the wrong way, you could be paralyzed. There's a whole plethora of things that could go wrong here, and so we went to another doctor, and she was getting them. Well, we moved out of state, and she had to go because the pressure in her head builds up so bad because of that tumor, and her stents out of the back of her neck were genetically not big enough, so that made it even worse. So that spinal fluid builds up in the brain, and it's really painful. So the only way to relieve it is through a spinal tap. And the thing is, when they give that spinal tap, you got to put it right in a certain spot. You got to listen for that little pop when it goes in, and everything. I've seen her get probably 100 spinal taps, so I knew how to do them. Because I watched them. I'm right there watching them. And we go to this. She had to go to the emergency room. It was so bad I took her in there. Well, they had two doctors in there that were, I don't know what you call them when they first start out, residents or whatever. They weren't really doctors yet.
Interns.
Interns, yes. Well, they was going to do it. Well, the spinal tap kit comes in a little hermetically sealed case. It's very sterile because, listen, you could really die and get all kind of bad things. You're poking a needle in your spinal fluid. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, they're like, listen, I get psychic abilities anyway, and I can pick up on people's feelings. I'm like, oh, man, this is feeling bad. I'm like, this is not, and that's before they ever start talking. And then it's like, they had never done one before.
Oh, wow.
And they're nervous. They don't know what to do. And I'm like, look, I've seen 100 of them done. I talked them through it. And as I'm talking, telling them how to do it and everything, and how to put the kit together and everything. And I'm not even a doctor. I was telling them how to do it. And then I said, once you put it in there, I said, and here's the other thing. Once you punch that in, there's a little valve, like an actual little valve in there. And you got to crack that valve. Now, if you crack that valve all at once, that fluid comes out real quick, and that's not good for the patient because it's like a mad rush, and they can get dizzy, and then afterwards they get a really bad headache and stuff. You got to let it seep out just a little bit at a time, and then you can't take out more than 40 cc's, I think it is, or it's bad things too. Well, I was telling them all that. And then one of the doctors that was coming around in emergency